Yeah, so we're going to be talking about getting your film from an idea to reality, which is a harder process than most people would think. The beauty of technology nowadays is the fact that we do have cameras in our phones. Everybody has access to like an editing software that's for free, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to produce a good movie. So like Olivia was saying before, knowing where you can break the rules, what rules there might be, are helpful in getting you started with that. And we're going to talk a lot about planning for your film, because what we do probably about 80% of the time is just planning what we're going to do in order to just pick up a camera and get going. Because whatever you plan for at the end of the day is what you're going to get, which is something we don't like to hear. I often don't like to hear that about my own life. So when we are starting to make a film, we often break it down into these 5 different stages. We have development, we have pre-production, production, post-production, and distribution. And you can see that 2 of them are highlighted in yellow. Development and pre-production are kind of this before stage where you're not running on the treadmill yet of like picking up a camera and going. These are all the questions that no one likes to ask before a film. So like in development, you're really tweaking your idea, you're crafting it, you're molding it, you're researching what you want to do. So what is your ideas? What's your storyline? That's a big thing that we talk about. Even though we're working in nonfiction formats, we try to at least predict how we think the story is going to go. But being in the nature of documentary, we have to be ready to pivot if we see that story going something completely differently in the production phase. What's your motivation behind doing this? What's the theme that you're going to draw out throughout your film? What style do you want to portray? We often say make your budget your aesthetic. So if you have, a YouTuber budget but want to produce a feature film, you're going to have to probably fundraise in order to get to that stage. But like I said, with Leviathan, that was on DSLRs and GoPros. So this depends. And why are you producing this film? We have so much content nowadays, it's almost crippling. So why are you going to take the time to make something and put it out in the world? Like, what is your motive behind that? Yeah. Have you seen someone do something like this before? Can you pivot it into a new direction, or tweak it and make it a little bit better? Or if someone already said it and they said it well, do you need to add more voices in that choir? Then we move to pre-production, and this is what I lovingly call the mom stage. Is how are you going to execute that idea? Who's going to help you, if anybody's going to help you at all? What is your budget? Are you going to be eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches throughout your experience in there so you can buy a really nice camera? Or are you going to just use what you have, like your cell phone, or just like duct tape a little mic on top of something? Duct tape and Sharpies are the best thing in fieldwork and film as well. When will you film? Is it going to be in the winter? Is this research that you're focusing in on, do they only do their time travels maybe in the spring? Is it going to be outside? Would summer weather be better than deep Montana winter? Unless that is something you want to focus on. Where will you film, and where will this film end up? Are things that we think about before we hit export on our film. So where will this film end up? Are you going to YouTube? You're on a Vimeo, TikTok, because that's taking over the world, or a feature length film? These are all decisions that you know before in order to produce a film that will cater to your needs. Because you will need different things for TV and feature length films than you would need for YouTube and things like that. Production is what everybody loves to do. It is when you pick up a camera and go. Do you have your lights ready, your camera ready, and your sound? Those are the 3 areas that we're going to talk about more specifically. Once you do shooting, even though that's the majority of your budget, you will spend most time in pre-production and post-production and distribution in a timeline setup. You can probably spend hours and days editing when you thought it would take 10 minutes. So post-production is where you're going to edit. You're going to have sound mixing, music, animations if you want that. If you want to color correct anything, this is where you really get to craft your art. And it's really fun to be in this stage because you get to see your story come alive. Something that you've thought about in development and pre-production, you get to see and feel the story that you want other people to know about. And then distribution, where's this film going to go? This is, I'm probably saying this is the most neglected stage, but this truly is the most neglected stage because often people don't think about it enough in film of where is it going to go? Because if you make a film and you don't actually have a means of showing it to someone, what's the point of doing the film? It can be just perfectly fine for your own personal diary, but it's like research. So like if you're doing research but you never publish anything, is it going to help the greater good? So where is it going to end up? Is it going to be on YouTube, Vimeo, television, theater? And like I said before, these are questions that we've already asked ourselves. We're not going to be caught off guard when someone, if we're going to a theater, asks us for a specific file format. We've already thought of that, which are big ideas that you guys do not need to think about that now, but something helpful just to know that there's intricate questions within each of these stages, and you guys will just slowly learn throughout what you need in order to produce a film efficiently. So yeah, when we're in the development stage, we're going to go through each of one of these and kind of parse them out a little bit more. Even though we think in a linear format for our timeline, our stories are the cyclical thing when we're trying to understand what our film is going to be. So we think about our storyline. Where do you see this story going? If you're following a specific scientist, you know how their research is going to, number one, know what their research is and know it well enough to ask questions and be curious with them, but also where this research is impactful to, you know, the greater human good or something like that. If you see down at the bottom of the screen, specifically understanding, have other people have talked about this topic before is helpful because even though we were told in elementary school, like ask before copying someone, copying is like is a way that you can grow your different skills in film. Not necessarily taking the exact film and pushing it off as yours, but seeing aspects of films that may have been in your area of interest. So for example, I'm a marine scientist, so I enjoy watching marine science docs and seeing where they did really well and where they did horribly. So Leviathan is a beautiful poetic film about the fishing industry, and that is just a unique way of telling an inside story of that area. But most recently on Netflix, I don't know if you all have seen Seaspiracy. It is probably everything that is wrong with documentaries because it can portray the way that they manipulated facts is something that I don't want to do. So it's a way to know who have done it well, who has done it poorly, and even in poor films, you can find things that they did well, which is interesting. Maybe it's how they did a graphic where like that is very streamlined and cool. So what can you reform, redeem, and reject in different films that you've seen? Specifically aesthetics, what do you want this to look like? Are there any artistic elements you want to do, like animations? Do you want your interviews to be shot classically if you're doing them where they're looking 45 degrees off camera to the interviewee, or do you want them to look straight down the camera in order to really fully connect to the audience? That might have been uncomfortable a couple years ago, but we're used to YouTubers talking to us. So that might be a more engaging thing now. So this is just this constant cycle. It would be lovely if we thought of our storyline and we're like, cool, we got it, let's go. But it's in the development phase, it's a lot of sifting through the weeds in order to find truly what your storyline is and not just what you want, which is a hard thing to kill your darlings when you figure out that your story is going in a different direction, because you're learning. We're called to be learners in this process. So we've thought deeply about our film, probably too deeply for some people's own comfort. Where do we go in pre-production? It's not that complicated. Google Drive is our best friend, like it probably is for all of you in college, which we keep paperwork on there. We keep, release forms. We keep ideas about storylines. We keep interview scripts that we may have transcoded and things like that. And recently, a program that I have and Olivia has enjoyed is Notion. I feel like a YouTube influencer when I'm pitching this to you right now, but it's a helpful productivity app that's free up to a certain point. Google Drive, you can pay, up to a certain point if you would really want to. But I use the free version. We both use the free version. The only thing that it could be a stumbling block is that it will only let you upload photos or PDFs up to 5 megabytes, but a way around that is just to link the thing to your Google Drive, and then it doesn't know how much data is in that. But Notion essentially allows you to create, instead of being in more of a structured format of Google Drive, Notion allows you to play in this realm of a nonlinear productivity program, which means like you can just make it look how your film needs to be planned out. We'll give you these more live slides later, but if you see throughout this entire presentation, see my little mouse came up. You guys know how to get to Google Drive, but Notion is, I have them all linked throughout the rest of the presentation. So if you click on this little icon, it'll go to the Notion page if you want to check it out. But this is a Notion page that I have been working on for my film called Statistically Caught. It's about marine fishery statistics and how these NOAA scientists crunch numbers for months in order to tell fishermen when to fish, where to fish, how much to fish without collapsing the entire system, which is pretty impressive what they do. So you can see that I have this main page, and then I have stories, context, trip itinerary, shooting, budget, and you can just make it as complex or as simple as you want. You can see I have my research page here where I have links to all the talks or lectures or things that I've been unpacking. If you would click on these things, I could take notes on them. Because one thing that I have found hard in Google Drive or different more structured formats is I just don't remember what I read. And we read so much. I'm sure you guys all feel that way with reading things for different classes or different research projects. You just don't know who said what. You just know that you understand all of the information, and trying to backtrack is pretty hard. I have all of my contacts. That's a pretty important thing in film, is to keep all of your contact information. What's their cell phone number? What's their email? If they're on camera, do you have a release form? We often think about how do we legally, cover our butts, which is pretty interesting to think about constantly. But these are all the people that I've talked to so far about my film. I've played around with storyline in there. You can see that all these pages are different. You can cater to what you want. I could move these around if I'm going to change my act structure, something like that. It helps me visually see it. And yeah, Notion, wonderful. It can get more complex from there, but that's just my subtle pitch. I do not get paid by Notion, but have fun if you want to use it.
It's really useful.
It's really useful. Yeah, we talk about non-linear editing a lot, which is just a way that we don't cut things on physical tape anymore unless you want to. We work in programs that allows us to be in a non-linear or not a straight line format and throw these things around. And I think Notion is a filmmaker's dream of living in a structured but non-linear format, which is pretty lovely. This also might be helpful for your daily life. Pitch from Notion, super fun. So then we planned, we thought about our idea for our film. Now we're into production, and these are all questions that we've tackled before, but in the production phase, I'm just going to show you the different tools that we often think about. Lighting, camera, sound. Those are the three. That's the trifecta that we're playing into in this stage. Yeah, lighting. Use what you have. The best and worst thing about filmmaking is that you can spend what you want. So you can spend thousands of dollars on lighting equipment, or you can spend none. You can go to your shower, get the shower sheet and put it over a window so it's a little more diffuse on someone. So don't feel like you have to spend a lot to be a good filmmaker. That's just a lie that companies try to tell you so you can buy their stuff. Learn what you have, learn your filmmaking skills on what you have, and use them so much that they break, that you know them inside and out, and then you know what you like and you don't like about them. So if you want to make an informed purchase, you know what to better use. So this is a really simple trick that we often use in filmmaking. It's just called diffusing the light. You can see that this guy is holding a silk. It's a very thin piece of white fabric, and it just diffuses the light on him really well. So if you're interviewing someone outside, like I said, you can use a shower curtain. It doesn't have to be and clamps. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. But see in this first picture, he has really harsh light. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing thing. But on here, you can actually see that his hair isn't blown out. He has bleach blonde hair. And I didn't really see that before here. But you get to see more of the personality on camera, which is helpful. We love to see people, so seeing them well is a good way of doing that.
I want to mention, whenever you go into a space, like you're looking around saying like, is this a good space to interview someone? At any point when you're listening and when you're looking, you can leave. That is like the trick of the trade, because if you're not liking the lighting, if it's really giving that harsh and you don't have that stuff, take them outside if you can. Like, find a space that works for you, and don't be afraid to tell the person you're interviewing, hey, we're gonna have to move, because this is ultimately your film and they want you to make them look good. Yeah. So if you're in a space that has terrible sound or you can't make them look good, go ahead and move, like, or reschedule if you have to, but make sure that it's okay to stop things and like move on.
Yeah, it's okay to care about what you're seeing and hearing. And people don't feel uncomfortable. They're like, oh, we're moving now. That's cool. If you don't just want to use the sun as your main light source, you can get a little bit fancier. Yeah, China balls are something that are a trick of the trade. They can be $10 to $20. They're pretty cheap. And if you go to a production, like a fiction film set, a Marvel studio set, they actually use diffuse light if they're outside a lot. They set up giant diffuse sheets, or they use China balls. China balls are kind of the ideal lighting source, even though it seems like we can get so much fancier. We can spend so much more money. So like I said, if you go to a fiction film set, you'll see truckloads of lighting situations, but you'll also see China balls in there. Yeah, like I said before, you can click on these things and you can go and find them if you want to look more into them. You can use garage lights. I've often used that. They can be pretty harsh. So diffusing them or bouncing them off of a wall might be helpful to you. Those get a little bit more expensive, but you can find them at pawn shops. Get creative with it. And now we are in the age of LED lights. So you can buy LED lights. You can buy them pretty cheaply or as expensive as you want. And they are very compact. They're very light. They don't overheat, so you don't have your interviewee sweating, which is a hard thing with older lights. Like a garage light actually emits heat. LEDs keep it pretty tight to them. So just be aware of what you can put in your toolkit. And like I said, China balls are some of the cheapest, but the most used things on film sets because they just look nice. A fun fact is that the entirety of The Godfather inside shots were shot with just China balls. So you can have a pretty fancy film with China balls. Don't feel like you're cutting yourself short with that. So we got our lighting situation. What's going to capture that light now? What is your camera going to be? You can use your phone. We have brilliant phones nowadays. Even within my lifetime, the iPhone 1 compared to the iPhone, whatever number they're on now, is drastically different. There's competitions for people filming entire movies on iPhones.
Money, like film festival money, like you can make a lot with this kind of movie.
Yeah, or like the joke of all those commercials of like, this was shot on iPhone. It's pretty impressive what you can do with it. So you can use your phone. You can use an old camera. This is actually the camera. This is a Rebel T5i. They're not even on the T5i anymore. They're on like the T8 or T7. And this is the camera that I first purchased in high school. And it got me the majority of my professional gigs when I was learning how to do things, which is pretty insane because it's not that great of a camera compared to some of the wild cinema grade cameras that they have out there nowadays. Or like, for your set, do you need an action camera? Like in Leviathan, they were chucking that camera off the boat and chunking it into the water. You can't do that with a DSLR, SLR, even if it's in a housing cage, it won't really look the same. You could do it with your phone, but that might be sad if you don't get it back.
Yeah.
So GoPros or action cameras are a way of going into those more extreme environments. So say you need to be thrown into water, or it's going to be outside for a long period of time, or some of these GoPros can handle extreme high heat. So maybe you want an example of a test tube in a high heat oven, and you just want a time lapse of that. I would double check with how hot you can push that, but GoPros have been tested to go into more extreme areas, and I'm sure they have tighter cameras that you can look into for that. Yeah, use what you have. Your families probably have cameras lying around the house. And my suggestion often with people that are starting out to be filmmakers, they're like, Grace, what camera should I buy? I'm like, just use what you have first to see if you actually like making films, because they take a lot of effort. Yeah, and you can find my old camera. Not even how much. I think I paid $600 for it when I was in high school. You could probably buy that for $200 now if you want a camera, or you can buy old GoPros. The sky's the limit with not spending money. Get creative with it. So, also in production, if you're using your phone or just really anything, know your menu setting. It sounds like such a lame thing to be like, just be curious, just like sit down, don't read a book or something, and read your menu settings on your camera or your phone, because you'll be surprised what you find in there. And I'll go into more detail of what these random numbers mean. But to know what are the limits on your phone, your camera, your GoPro, allows you to aesthetically think creatively. So to know that I can go into 60 frames per second on my phone means I can slow things down. I have more frames per second of film in order to stretch it out. So maybe I want to shoot something in slow motion. Maybe that doesn't matter to me, and I just want something that's really high resolution, so I'm shooting in 4K. So yeah, be curious about your phones, be curious about your cameras, because the more you know in the inner workings of your gear, the more you can push your limits. And then also, if you end up wanting to buy something in the future, you know what you specifically want and need for that. Also, iPhone and Android change their operating systems all the time. I'm pretty sure this is what it would look like if you go to find and change different formats on your camera, but just be aware that it might be different because they change it every 2 seconds. And often Androids have more video capability changeable things than iPhones, but a way around that, I don't have it on here, I apologize for that, is this app called Filmic Pro. It allows you to kind of use your camera use your phone as if it was a camera. It has all the settings that you can tweak and dial on it. Doesn't mean it will, make your camera into a cinema grade thing, but it allows you to change the settings a little bit more within its framework that it has. I think it's a $15 app, one purchase for Filmic Pro, but often people use that on their phone, so they can have a little bit more control. So say you have this camera, it's your old camera, and you're thinking about upgrading. That's a lovely space to be in if you have money for that. And one thing I would suggest before diving in to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars on cameras is to rent one and try it out for yourself first. There's this company called Borrow Lenses. It's an online rental house. There's dozens of them. This is the one that Olivia and I love to use the most. Their customer service is some of the kindest. You just want to be on the phone with them when you are having a problem, because they'll help you. But yeah, you can rent a camera. Say you're shooting someone's research, you don't have a camera, you don't really want to use your phone, you might have cracked it, the camera doesn't look that awesome, you don't have a GoPro, you don't have any other resources at your disposal. Maybe just like looking into a lens rental house where you can rent a camera and a lens. Make sure you have an SD card, that's the main thing, and you can use that for a week, and then you can give it back and say you liked using it, say you didn't like using it, say you liked using a Canon camera and then you tried a Sony and Sony wasn't that helpful. Whatever works for you. Try before you buy, because it's a pretty expensive road to get into if you don't like something, and we don't want you to buy something and it just become a decorative shelf piece type of thing. So borrow lenses, like I said, if you click on this picture, you will find that website more specifically to go there. But you're like, Grace, I know nothing about cameras. How am I going to rent a good camera if I'm going to go that way? But I'm kind of sick of using just pointing and shooting my phone or putting up a GoPro. I don't really understand those numbers. What does 4K mean compared to 1080? What is frame rate? What is shutter speed? Stuff like that. We're going to go into that for the camera basics. Yeah, and this is probably going to be like a fire hydrant of information, but it will be the baseline questions that you probably need to do a little bit more digging in order to understand what is going to best suit your needs and to produce the best film. So we're going to start off in the photography world a little bit different. First, film world uses this as well, but I'm going to be talking about specifically with photos because that's the basis of all film, is just single photos stacked in a line. So when we're talking about shooting and we want to shoot something well, we often break it down into the exposure triangle. An exposure triangle is like when you see me and Olivia on this screen, we want to see all of us. We want to see our facial expressions. We don't want it to be too dark. Do we want to see the background? Do we not want to see the background? Questions like that. And you can see there's a bunch of numbers there, and you say, like, this is very mechanical, but it will impact your aesthetic look of what your film is. So knowing these things are helpful tools in your tool belt in order to manipulate them in play. So we have these things called ISO, aperture, and shutter speed. You can see that they're arranged in this triangle. And if they're perfectly balanced, exposure would be right down the center. That means everything on screen is the way we want it. Nothing's too dark, too bright, nothing's blown out. It just works. And depending on what we are going to prioritize, we'll move our triangle left, right, up, and down to what is perfect exposure for that specific setting. No setting is created equal. Knowing your space is how you're going to change the things on your camera. So aperture down here at the bottom is how much light is let into the camera sensor. You can see down here, these are actually fractions. Even though this is the smallest number, it's actually the biggest fraction in the aperture area. And then this one is the biggest number, but the smallest fraction. So you see the smaller hole down the center of what the camera would look like with the lens. So how much light is let in? So if we have a really wide aperture, we're letting more light into our camera. That will create the background to be blurry. That's like if you're thinking of a portrait photo. And you want the subject to be in focus, but you want the background to kind of be away from it. You don't want people to be focusing on that. You want a wide aperture, but you have to know that you're letting more light in. Say you want to see more of the space. You want to lower, you want a higher denominator fraction. You want a smaller aperture. Just think of when you're squinting in a classroom and trying to see the board. When you're squinting, you can actually see better. You can see farther away. That's how I tend to remember it. So aperture, how much light is just let into your camera with these blades that kind of flower open and flower close. Shutter speed, how fast are the doors in front of your camera opening and closing? In the photo world, like I said, we're going to talk about photo first and then jump into film, because film is going to be more specific to what its needs are for shutter speed. In the photo world, if you're hand holding a camera, in order for it not to be blurry when you take a photo, you need to have your shutter at 1/60th or above. That way it's clicking fast enough so it can grab a moment in time without it being blurry. If you have a tripod, feel free to break that rule. Perfectly fine. But just know the faster, so the bigger this number on the bottom, the smaller the fraction, the smaller amount of time that door is going to be open for your camera. So if you have something really high action sports that you're taking a photo of, you want your shutter speed to be fast. If you're taking star time lapses, you're going to want it to be more open and a longer exposure that way. Specifically for film, film dictates its shutter speed based on what your frame rate is going to be. And we always like it to be double our frame rate. So if we're shooting 24 frames per second, 48, or the closest thing that's probably in your camera is 50. 1/50th is what you want it to be. We'll talk about that more later. But just know that shutter speed is a big determining factor to how we determine what our aesthetic is going to look like. And lastly, ISO is how sensitive the camera sensor is to light. So just like in the morning when you wake up, light is more sensitive to you than in the middle of the day. Your camera has its preference too. So if you are up at 64,000, it's going to be brighter on your screen if you're in a really low light situation. But if you're outside, you can handle 100 ISO because it's already pretty bright for you. So yeah, that is probably a mouthful, and you're like, Christ, there's fractions. I didn't sign up for math. Yeah, click on this video or this photo. There's going to be a YouTube link to someone explaining it again. If you need to listen to it over and over again.
I still get confused. I'm just gonna tell you that. I'm like camera people, and I'm like concepts, and like so. After her explaining this to me about 3 times, I finally got it. I'm like, oh, all right. I think I understand how to properly. I've been improperly setting up my camera this entire time. Good to know. Like,
but that's okay. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that YouTube video that I linked isn't the most helpful for you. People have talked about this ad nauseum on YouTube for shutter speed, ISO, and aperture. The hope is to get a good quality image. That's not just flipping your camera into auto. You can have more artistic control over that. It's perfectly fine to switch it into auto, but if you want to, craft your situation, we often talk about painting in light and also in our camera because that's our modern tools for crafting our film.
The other wonderful thing is like, you can, because it is visual, you can see what's actually happening. So you can just manipulate ISO and see within that camera, like, oh, it's getting brighter the higher up I go. Oh, if I go lower, it's getting darker and darker and darker. So that you have a better, like more basic understanding. Your camera is smart enough to show you what in the world is happening. If you change it, it's not going to be like a photograph that you don't, with film, you don't know until you've developed it. And you're like, oh man, that's all useless because I didn't properly put it together.
Yeah. So that's the beauty of that. Awesome. So now we're going to dive more into the film world. So film and photo kind of play within that same space of the exposure triangle. Resolution is often something that we talk about in our production process. Does 1080p, which means how much detail is in it, an image holds, how many pixels make up that image. So you have probably heard like 4K TVs, 8K TVs, probably get to like 3,500K TVs forever. And people just say that they have that type of thing. Does it really matter if you have 4K? Does 1080p, that means smaller amount of pixels. So you can see that the screen in 4K is getting a little bit bigger. Smaller with 1080p. Some of the best films that I have watched are in 720. So just because you have something that has 4K doesn't mean it's good. So just be aware of that. But you can see this is the screen in which you're playing in. So having more pixels from an editing standpoint can be helpful. So say I'm shooting an interview, I'm only having one camera. That means I can't cut between 2 different angles when they're talking, because it would be lovely if people spoke in beautiful sentences. I can't even do that right then and there, and not have to cut it up at all. But the fact of the matter is, most documentaries, when they're not showing the interview person talking, their soundbite is probably completely cut up of all their ums, all their uhs, anything like that. So having resolution to jump to different points in their interview might be helpful for you. So say you interviewed just a single person down the line, and you want to jump to something that they said further later, but you don't have anything in between, and you think it continuously helps what they're saying there. You can just cut in, and 4K is something that is helpful with that in post-production editing, where you can just crop in a little bit and it won't destroy the quality of your film. So just be aware of that with resolution. But just because something says 4K doesn't mean it's great. So just be aware of that caveat.
There's also one more thing, sorry. When you're like making YouTube videos, right? Like your resolution is going to, whenever you put it in something, you're putting it from the camera, you're putting it into an editing software, and you keep shortening and smaller, like making it smaller resolution and quality wise. So think of that. Maybe you have to shoot in 4K because you know it's going to eventually get to TV and it's going to be actually in 1080p in the end. So that goes back to the development phase when you're thinking about where is this going, to determine how high of a resolution you might actually need.
Yeah, it's pretty insane what you can get away with low resolutions or high resolutions.
Yeah.
Super fun. If you click on this photo, you can find a YouTube video if you want that to be better explained. Another thing that I was kind of alluding to earlier that we talk about in film is frame rate. So frame rate is how many frames are in 1 second of film. So if you see this little graphic up here, 24 frames is what we naturally see as normal motion. If you remember Charlie Chaplin, he seems like he's running around all over the place because they were shooting in 18 frames per second, and that doesn't seem natural to us. That's why he seems pretty fast, and things like that. So having more frames allows us to slow it down. You can see that this has 120 frames per second. We're able to see the tennis ball more times before it hits the ground compared to 60. And we love our frame rate, our shutter speed, my apologies, our shutter speed to be double our frame rate. So whatever we're playing in, so it looks natural. So if we're in 24 frames per second, on that exposure triangle, our shutter in film is going to be dictated by that. So you're going to have to prioritize that part of the triangle over the other two in order to craft your image. So if you're at 24, 48, or around 50, doesn't have to be exactly dialed in, will be what you want your frame or your shutter speed to be. If you're doing 60 frames per second because you want to slow it down, you want 120 to be your shutter. But just knowing you're cutting the light more now, so you're going to have to be in a brighter area or a camera that needs greater ISO, like to get higher in sensitivity, or a wider aperture to let more light in. Say you want to go even slower. Every YouTuber likes 120 frames per second for buttery B-roll, and that would dictate your shutter to be 1/240. So that's cutting the light a lot. So you're gonna have to be in a bright situation, have a wider aperture, or a camera that has higher sensitivity. So these are things that you think about when you want to craft what you're doing. So, cool. This is kind of in the weeds. Once you get into the nitty-gritty of camera work, we talk about bit depth. And this is more in post-production, but having cameras that have a higher bit depth allows you to play with colors more. If you are a photographer, you probably know about shooting in RAW. It's essentially just making a beefier photo that has a greater amount of play to it so you can change the colors. So bit depth, the number of color values per channel of red, green, and blue. If you see here, in 1 bit, you can barely see her eye, and the greater you get up, you can see her eye more fully with 8 bits. Over here, you can see that in 8-bit, you see more banding, and then the higher we get up in 10-bit, the more streamlined that rainbow is. So this is a helpful thing for color correction, so you can really be like, this is the style, this is the mood I want my film to go into. This allows you to have greater room of play with that. This is a complex topic of bit depth. Click on that photo, YouTube video. Also, okay, so those were all of the exposure triangle type elements of the inner workings of your camera, of just knowing that you have more abilities than you probably think when doing it. And when you, we're able to gauge authenticity pretty well with a film, and a way of caring for that is in your camera settings, even though it doesn't seem like at times. So creating a high quality film can give you more clout in the viewer audience world. So you have your camera, use what you have, but now let's stabilize it. You don't want really hand shaky footage unless that's your aesthetic that you're going for. People will get motion sickness, won't watch your film. So you don't have to get fancy. you can just use your camera strap. Just like in architecture, having more points on something allows you to stabilize things better. Triangles are going to be your best friend. So being able to put your camera strap around you, maybe you're walking around with someone and just pushing it out as far as you can, allows you to smoothly do that better instead of holding it back here and wiggling all around. Say you don't need to move around, you can just put it on a tripod. Make sure you're having a video tripod. If you have a photo tripod, that's perfectly fine. A way to tell if it's a video tripod is by this handle. This allows you to pan and tilt things pretty smoothly so you can move your camera around. A photo tripod won't have that. So you might have a video tripod, you might have a camera strap at your house. Use it. You don't have to spend money. If you want to get a little bit fancier, you can throw your camera or your phone on a gimbal. This is just like, if you move a chicken around, it'll stay, the head will stay in the same place. This is kind of the same idea. You can do that as well with a gimbal. You can spend no money, use the camera strap that comes with it, or you can spend money to get a more cinematic shot if that is what you're gauging for. But honestly, learn on the camera strap, learn what moves that you like the best first, and then see if the gimbal would fit your needs. I often handheld my camera, even in professional film shoots that I do. So don't feel like you have to be on a gimbal to feel like a professional. We talked about action cameras before, just to hit on the variety of action cameras nowadays. GoPros used to be the only one in the industry. That's not necessarily the standard anymore. DJI, which is a drone maker as well, you probably have seen their little drones flying around, has the Osmo Action as well. And this little guy is the Insta360. And that one, that's probably almost the same size. It's probably a little bit smaller on your screen, depending on how big your screen is at home. It is pretty tiny, and it has a magnet, so you can put it on a necklace. Maybe you want to put it on the top of a lab room. Sky's the limit. People have put them on drones. So it's a pretty tiny, pretty high resolution camera with pretty awesome specs on it. So if you need something that is more of an action camera base, the sky's the limit. You don't have to just get a GoPro. Next thing that is probably the most neglected part of production is sound. Let us hear what you have to say. That is a really important thing. We actually watch most of our films with our ears. You can forget bad resolution. You can forget poorly shot things, but you will not sit long for poorly sounding things. That's just a fact. You should think about your surroundings when you're in an area, like Olivia was saying before. Don't be afraid to move to a quieter location if you know you don't have really direct like lav mics on that person. If they're in a kitchen area and you can unplug a refrigerator because it's buzzing in the background, don't be afraid. You can do that for your interview. If you're in a lab setting that you can't unplug things like this picture here, like that's okay. You're just gonna have to know that you're gonna have a lot of background noise. So how do you prepare well for that? Because fixing it in post is really hard. It's one of the most the hardest things to manipulate in post. So we talk about shotgun mics, lavalier mics, and external recorders when we talk about sound. Shotgun mics are things directly on top of your camera, or if a boom guy is there helping you. Lavalier mics are a way of, of collecting interviews, or maybe someone's walking around a lot and you don't have a boom mic that someone can walk around with you. These are pretty helpful. Rode has made these pretty awesome tiny mics that you don't even need a little microphone on it if you want to, if you don't want to, and they can just clip to someone's shirt. If you want to get a little bit fancier, you can use an external recorder and kind of have a safeguard, having sound running off of your camera, sound running off an external recorder, something that's cleaner in collecting it. These things are often cheaper than an external recorder. You can find what you can find the cheaper solutions to work well as an external recorder, depending on your situation. And I linked all these type of things if you want to look more into what those products are. But another thing, when we're talking about our sound, if it's windy, we talk about these things called dead cats. They can be on your boom mic, they can be on your your lavalier mic, you can find a head strap one for your phone. They look a little bit funny, so just understand if you're laving someone up with a giant fluffy ball on them, just know that that's going to be in frame. Maybe you can hide it a little bit better. But this helps diffuse air around it so wind doesn't sound as loud, and gets clear sound for you. We have stepped out of production. We're into post-production now. What software are you going to use? The sky's the limit. Olivia and I use Premiere, which is a paid program that we use with Adobe, but don't feel like you have to pay anything. Movie Maker is something I learned in middle school. It's free. They have it on Mac and Windows now. iMovie is free on all Apple devices. Often when people ask me, Grace, what software should I use when starting out with film? I say iMovie, because most people have an iPhone or an iPad or an iMac for their laptop. And that's free within your computer. So use it, learn how to make films well, and then spend money if you want something that has more flexibility. Final Cut Pro is what Apple has made for their computers. It's only for Macintoshes. Premiere bounces back in between Mac and PC. You can click on these things and they'll go directly to those websites as well.
There's also discounts for students, so keep that in mind.
Yeah. Premiere, to get the Adobe Creative Suite, I think it's about $80. $80 a month if you're not a student. You can get it cheaper if you're a student. See if your school pays for it. That's a great way of getting around it. Our school pays for Premiere for us, which is pretty lovely. One last thing, in post-production, and just some fun science channels in general, you probably have a lot of questions when it comes to cameras or different editing styles. These are just different YouTubers that I've found helpful over the years of just like asking a question and figuring out. So like Gerald Undone does gear reviews and goes into the really deep dive things of cameras and things like that. So you can click on these guys. Mark Bone does more documentary, what is helpful with interviews, what is not helpful, things like that. And science channels even live on YouTube. This is where you guys are going to be playing in that space. From anything from big organizations down to people that just, this girl, her name is Physics Girl on YouTube. She just loves explaining physics. So that is her thing. Or Smarter Every Day, he tackles a new science topic and just tries to improve that. So yeah, you guys can be that way as well. You can click on these things and find their YouTube channels. Last thing is distribution. Even though it's the most neglected, we're going to spend the littlest amount of time on it for you guys today, and then get into a workshop that talks more directly about it. But where is your film going to go? Is it going to go on YouTube? Is it going to go on television? Is it going to go on theater? Is it going to go on TikTok? Because that's a new player in the game. What are your thumbnails going to be? People are visual. They're going to see your thumbnail before they click on your movie. These are 2 thumbnails that I made for the Hubble Space Telescope videos that I was pretty privileged to be a part of. And how do you get people to know what they're going to click on and be interested at the same time? We're going to go into that for our second workshop. So we're going to go into Canva. Canva is a way, I'm going to stop sharing here. Canva is a way that you can make thumbnails or different, even business cards, products, things that if you're not a Premiere, or Photoshop editor, you don't know how to do that well, and you just need something that's pretty straightforward for you, you can use Canva. It's free at a certain point. Of course, you can pay for something, but you can make thumbnails for your videos so people are interested in order to look at them. So Olivia is going to go through that as well.
Yeah, so you guys can still hear us, yeah? Making sure. You good? Great. Cool. So Canva is a free place. You can look it up online, but I basically just typed in like YouTube thumbnails, and these are some of the basic ones that they popped up. So it's already in the format that you want, like 1080p formatting on the YouTube. And these are just ideas. You don't have to make it like this, but these are kind of a way to get you started if you're like, man, I don't even know how to start. So take a look at that. And the cool thing is, like, this is a faded green to blue. Well, it shows you exactly how to do it. If you're like, man, I really like that fade, I'm going to copy that and then put it on my thumbnail that I make. And how you do that is just you add a little page that, here, I need to move this so I can see what I'm doing. Right over here, it says add page. You create a new page and then you can put your stuff in. So we've already chosen some things, and this is the participatory part of our stuff, but we've chosen 2 different ways. So here's like one thumbnail with some stuff on it, or we have this thumbnail with some stuff on it. And the question is, which one? It isn't finished, right? These are just your basic lines of what you guys want to do. So which one would you rather look at when you're looking at a YouTube video? Which one would you be more likely to click on? This first one or the second one? Go ahead and write in the chat.
You can type in the chat 1 or 2 if you would want, you know, the top-down trawler boat or the really cute sea lions. 2. Yeah.
2. All right. Yeah. I feel a theme. We're gonna stick with the elephant seals. All right, so with the elephant seals, we have these like cool things that are called elements. That's what this triangle and this square down here is. And you can see this on the left side of the screen, where they just give you shapes and you can pick the color. You can figure out what the opacity is. Like, is it gonna be really dark? Is it gonna be light? You can put frames around this whole footage. You can put some sort of moving sticker if you want to. The sky's the limit, but we chose these 2. So which one looks better? Do you like the angled look to put our title on, or do you like the right across the bottom?
And this allows us to draw our eye to different information. So that's why it's important. You can have just photos, but know that if you have text on it, you're going to want to draw someone's eye to it. So there you are.
Yeah, angled look?
You like angled? Any other votes? Angled.
Angled. All right, getting rid of this then. Okay, so now we have this angled look, which is super cool, but now we have to decide titles. Like, that's in our text area on this left side. You can do the basic title that you have here, which we kind of wrote out down there. You can choose the font that you want within it, or download fonts that you have online already stored. Like for the Marine Mammal Center, we have to use Roboto. That's a part of their branding. And so you're thinking about your branding, but maybe you don't have that yet. You really like these fun ones that are already made. So which ones do you guys think? Do you think the Big Bay Research or the white?
What's going to be your brand?
Yeah, what's your brand?
What's your brand?
Yellow, white, white.
Oh no,
white.
Ooh, we got white. I think
okay,
we got
white. It
yellow.
is.
So yellow.
I would be putting this somewhere over here, because again, you are trying to draw your eyes to that angled space. You don't want to just leave it blank. And usually this is the title of the film that you're watching, or it's a gotcha moment, like how to love sea lions, or whatever it's going to be with that image that you have behind there. That's what they're going to be focusing on, as well as the photo. And then we have a logo. Like, this is your brand, this is the logo. We have 2 different types. Which one do you guys like better?
The below text or the side? So below or side? Side. We got side so far. 2 sides.
Below.
We got 3 sides, 1 below,
2 below, 3 below.
Oh my
Ooh,
gosh.
God. Okay, Grace, tiebreaker. Go. Which one do you like?
Oh no, controversy. It is controversy. People might not click on it.
Oh God. Which one?
Let's do logo with text below, but put it in the angled blue part.
Got it. You like it over here.
There you go.
Yeah, there. So that goes away. And you can make it as big as you want. You could rotate this. If you really wanted to go crazy with the angle for some reason, you can do it. That's the fun thing. I will say, when you're making thumbnails, which is what we're doing to put into this video, you have to, with whatever photo you're going to do, adjust it. And how you adjust it is you hit that little adjust pad while you're clicked onto the photo, and then you want to boost the saturation. And yes, in film, you don't want to do this to the point where it breaks, where it's like, ew, that's orange. I can totally see that somebody put color into this. That's basically what saturation is. But in a thumbnail, because it's so small, that's what you want to do. You want to boost it just past that point where you're like, ew, that's really gross, because it's so tiny that it's eye-catching. And you're like, oh, that's really colorful. I want to choose that. Another pro tip is to cut down at least the, making it a little bit more sharp. that is another eye-catching thing when you're making thumbnails. So I'll take the blurriness not over 10 degrees to make it more sharp. You don't want to make it so sharp to the point where you're seeing the water and it looks like it's cutting through everything. No, that's not what you want. You want it to just be a little bit more sharp. Again, eye-catching, bringing people into that. And then when you're done, you literally hit download. It tells you what kind of style you can choose, what you want. And then it can go down to the one that you actually want to download, and boom, it's done. It's on your computer. You can automatically upload it to YouTube and you have your thumbnails done all in one package. So that's Canva. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Yeah.
And a very quick version of that. I know the last thing that we wanted to do is talking about homework. If you haven't used Canva, it's a lot of fun. It's very useful. The homework that we have is that we gave you guys 3 different clips. One you've probably already seen is Great Gardens a couple of times. Of course, we're obsessed. But there's basically, you're just going to be analyzing that film, talking about the shots that they use to like make that emotional connection. Are they like zooming in on the eyes? Are they giving you a low high angle? Is it really wide? Those are things that are being manipulated, as well as talking about how would you do it better? Like, you guys got to get into all of these different things of critically analyzing the things that you're watching in order to do it better and be better science communicators. That's the whole point. Hopefully you really enjoyed this, and we really enjoyed talking to you guys. So if you have any questions, I don't know if we have time, but if you have any questions, we have time. Yeah. So you can email us any point, especially if you want advice. You can email her about all the equipment advice. She is a wealth of knowledge. If you need help like with paperwork or any of the production or planning, or even if you have an idea for a film and you want to pitch it to someone, we're also really good sounding board for that as well.
Yeah. And don't feel like you're like, oh gosh, I don't think I'll ever create a feature full-length film. That's perfectly fine. Often in science communication, the small things are the great things. That's how we can reach people well. That's how we can share our knowledge that we have spent years in labs understanding. And the more that you care about it, the more it will show in your films. Because like I said before, we're really good gauges of authenticity. You can tell when someone's talking in front of you and they're not really there. So how do you portray what you love, what you've spent your degrees on, what you've spent your time and your money to other people, and know that they don't have the same experience as you do. So how do you understand their context in order to explain it well? That might be something straightforward, like a classic documentary, but that might be a short explainer video that you can put on YouTube. So really the sky's the limit, which can feel crippling if you have too many options, but just know that we live in the golden age of film. You can pick up your phone and you can do it for yourself. You don't have to go to Hollywood. You can be a production company from your bedroom, which is pretty insane, especially now with COVID. So